As the world is thrown into turmoil by the coronavirus crisis, we're all being forced to adjust to new ways of operating. For many parents, that means educating kids at home and finding new ways to cope in unfamiliar and challenging circumstances. Some of Australia's leading parenting experts are uniting to support parents through this time, raising funds for women's shelters in the process. And we are joined now by two of them via Skype, digital wellbeing expert Dr Kristy Goodwin and educational consultant Dr Prue Salter. Thank you both so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Jacinda.
Suddenly, here we are, we find ourselves with our kids at home, trying to muddle through homeschooling without any training. We need help. Well, I speak for me, I need help. Kristy, I'll start with you. What is the best way to approach this brave new world that we're in?
Look, my first bit of advice as a mum who's in the digital trenches with you is to lower the bar. We have been thrust into this almost instantaneously. Don't try to replicate school timetables or your work timetable in a home context. That's not going to work. You'll set yourself up for failure. The other thing that's really important is that you focus on your child's mental well-being first and foremost. We know that stressed brains are incapable of learning. They release cortisol, so they just can't learn when they're in that stress state. So focus on their mental well-being. And when it comes to using technology, plan technology, don't ban it. Digital amputation isn't the solution at this point in time.
I'm going to ask you some more questions, Kristy, about the use of digital devices in a minute. In the meantime, Prue, how do we adapt our homes into a learning environment? Because many of us are using the dining room table, we've got kids working on the floor, we don't have that kind of space. What do you advise?
Well, I think the best learning space is going to be the one where students are least distracted. So my top 5 tips, number 1 would be creative with what you've got. So look at this fresh look at the spaces in your house, the furniture in your house, and think about what you might be able to do a little bit differently. One boy told me that he had created a stand-up desk by taking an existing table and putting a box on top with his laptop on top. Great. Another thing is to make sure that you have a designated learning space. So carve out 1 or 2 spaces to keep the boundaries between the relaxation time and the learning time really clear. Third one would be to Google ergonomics. Make sure the way the students are sitting, the height of the chair, all of these things are going to make sure that it's supporting the body and we're not causing problems down the track. Things like headaches. Number 4 would be making sure that you've got decent lighting. A big cause of headaches and eye strain is poor lighting. And the last one would be a little bit quirky, and that is that colour can have a big effect on our learning. So like blue and green can be calming, so having a pot plant while they're working is great. Or yellow can stimulate mental activities, so creating a collage of yellow objects behind the wall or a piece of yellow cardboard or cloth. Just really starting to try and carve out a little space in the house that can be dedicated to learning.
Kristy, kids are having a lot more screen time, of course. That seems to be unavoidable because they're doing their schoolwork on screens, on iPads, and then they're FaceTiming with their friends in their breaks, which I think is important so they can stay connected. What is the happy medium here?
Look, there's no magic formula or amount of time that is necessarily safe or healthy. What I encourage parents to do, instead of obsessing and focusing on the how much question when it relates to screen time, instead, more importantly, focus on what they're doing with devices. Using it as a tool for communication and collaboration is really important, particularly at this time when we have suddenly socially isolated our young people. Being connected is one of our fundamental psychological needs. So we need to make sure that we're focusing on not only what, but also coming up with boundaries around when, where, and with whom they use the technology. I strongly encourage that parents are the pilot, not the passenger of the digital plane. So sitting down with your child or your teenager and coming up with some of those boundaries in collaboration with them. Going and just superimposing the boundaries on them will be met with a lot of frustration. So getting their buy-in is really important.
We're being told, the advice we're getting is not to worry too much about their learning at this time. Try to just enjoy the time and be creative, but it could be months. We could be here for a very long time. Should we be sticking to the curriculum in some form?
I think it depends on the age group that we're talking about. So I think in the primary school years, we really want to focus on the basics. We want to make sure that we're still doing spelling, we're still doing vocab, we're still doing reading, we're still doing basic maths. And then anything after that, I think is a bonus. In terms of the early years of high school, I think schools are putting a lot of effort into making sure they are still meeting curriculum requirements. So parents, as far as possible, we should support that. But I think we've got a little bit more flexibility in those years 7 to 10 years. But I think think even taking the time to do things like learning touch typing during this time would be a fabulous thing for those students to do. I think it's the seniors that we really need to really stick to those curriculum guidelines, because they're doing it tough. There's a lot of disruption, a lot of uncertainty. At the moment, the final Year 12 exams are going ahead at the end of the year in Australia, but the UK has just recently cancelled all of their exams. So it's not out of the question that we may cancel, postpone, or different states might do different things towards the end of this year. So that means the schools are putting a lot of resources into supporting the senior students. And it's absolutely essential that we do actually get them to stick to the curriculum as far as they can, making sure they follow their teacher recommendations. They put extra effort into their assessment marks in case they're used later on as an estimate, but they don't neglect things like study notes in case the exams go ahead. And of course, they have to remember all of the students are in the same boat. So the education authorities will make sure they're not disadvantaged, that Year 12 students are going to be looked after. So I guess the answer is it depends what age group your child is in as to how rigid you are in terms of following the curriculum.
And Prue and Kristy, I'm sure parents have so many more questions. I know I do. You're both joining up with some of the country's leading parenting experts to present a webinar for parents to answer those questions. The proceeds of that are all going to charity, to women's community shelters. How can people sign up for this? It's available to everyone, isn't it?
It is. If they go to Maggie Dent's website, commonsenseparenting.com.au, and the Circles of Support webinar.
All right, we've got those details on the screen there. I think that's happening live on Thursday, the 2nd of April. At 8 p.m, that is Australian Eastern Standard Time, and it goes for about an hour and 15 minutes, but you can tune in any time to that. I know I will be, because I've got a lot more that I need to understand about this whole new world. Thank you both for your time tonight.
No problem. And there is a replay as well that they can watch if they can't come at that time.